right, good morning. We're back another Saturday with the Watch Dawgs on our Black Media Network. Good morning or good afternoon, Mr. Hall.
Good afternoon.
What's going on with you? I think we got some familiar faces joining us today. So, you know, we're going to
Yeah,
talk
we
about
got
some elections. So
where they at. The other ones are late. Marcus is on time. So I guess he gets all the questions.
you get all the
Hey,
glory.
that's how alphas do, ain't that right, Brian?
Oh, boy. Jay Jones didn't hear about it. Jay Jones don't understand that. but
That's right. That's
So
right.
what we have for you all today, folks, and I want to do some education of the front end for folks. So what we have is we have folks in the United States Senate, Raphael Warnock. We have folks in the Georgia Senate, Derek Marlowe, who's running, and we have folks in the United States Congress who are representatives, and we have folks in the Georgia Assembly, which is our representatives. And so one of the things we wanted to do was highlight and support our candidates who we asked you all to vote for. And we have about 6 different representatives and 1 Senate candidate that we're going to feature today. 3 of them who are unopposed, so we don't want to make people feel like they were slighted. Those who were unopposed, we really didn't want to bring them on because they're unopposed. But those who are being opposed, who have opponents, we want to bring them on so that you can hear their vision. And so, like you said, Marcus Thompson, who are you? Tell us what you're running for.
I'm Marcus Thompson. I'm running for District 164. That includes South Savannah, Pooler, Bloomingdale, and Richmond Hill proper.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know if you guys, well, I know you guys are keyed in, but a lot of people may or may not know that the new battleground for a lot of our local rights are going to be fought in the state legislature. And so that's why the seat is so very important.
Yeah. And Julius, part of oh boy, all rise. I got him. All rise. Brother Marlowe, how you doing? Brother Marlowe, they say alphas be on time. I don't know what the signal's doing, but
No doubt. What's going on?
Go ahead, brother. Take your time.
It's like you're having some feedback from another.
Yeah, you might have 2 devices. Okay. We're going to mute you while you're handling that. Marcus, you could go ahead and tell us a little bit about your vision and what inspired you to run for this position. Excuse me.
Well, basically, the bottom line is the people are what inspired me to run. I know I've been one of the constituents for both federal and state elected officials, and over the last, since 2016, that's what sparked my individual interest into running for office, and then the caliber of candidates that have been put forth on the Republican side, honestly, that's been an inspiration to me to run as well, because if they can have a Herschel Walker and a Donald Trump, and we are over here fighting for people's rights to live, not only just to live, but to vote as well, then you know what? We've got to show up, and we got to show up right. So, yeah. But my vision is greater healthcare, better jobs, and better education. But when it comes down to it, man, we are in a healthcare crisis. That is my primary focus. That would be my primary focus, including not limited to going straight to HB 481 and trying to have that repealed. Abortion is healthcare. I feel deeply about that, and the fact that there is an assembly that is mostly filled with white men making a decision that takes away a woman's right to control her own body, that makes me a little bit nauseous, and I would fight to reverse that first and foremost.
Yeah, and I'm gonna come back to the healthcare thing, but Julius, what I've noticed, and I gotta highlight this: when is the last time you seen 2 young brothers, young meaning under the age of 45 or 50, running to make a change in our county. That's a statement. I just got to. That's beautiful.
And what's so great about it is they're both very intelligent,
right,
well-groomed young men
Amen.
that can lead us for the next 30, 40 years. We don't want them to be like Al Scott was, but still.
Oh, see, you messing up, man. You messing up. They're gonna be messing now.
We're not gonna be here that long.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I got to go.
But like Derek Marlowe, we did a quick education piece on the front end, and that Warnock is running for United States Senate. You're running for the Georgia Senate, and I want people to understand that because folks will sometimes get confused. I thought Warnock would know. We got to get our civic education today, and then sometimes I forget. So, Derek Marlowe, you're running for what, and tell us your vision.
I'm running for State Senate District 2 right here. I cover, that would be Thunderbolt, Savannah, Garden City, and Fort Wentworth, and some of the South Side included in there. I'm running for State Senate District 2. My vision for the state and our district is simple. Want to expand Medicaid to cover the most vulnerable Georgians. I want to decriminalize traffic. Most people don't realize this, but the state of Georgia is one of few states where traffic is a criminal offense. So if you miss court for a speeding ticket, a warrant could be issued for your arrest and your license suspended. If you got stopped in another county, you'd be arrested for driving on a suspended license and an unpaid speeding ticket. Traffic is criminal in the state of Georgia. We need to decriminalize traffic. Working on solutions for affordable housing and what that looks like, with the state creating an affordable housing trust and funding that through some additional revenue structures. If that's an additional tax to short-term vacation rentals, Airbnbs, to fund that affordable housing fund, that's something that's on the table that I'm considering, because many of those Airbnb short-term vacation rentals are taking away from the available rental market that exists. So we want to address that. I'm a big proponent of ending juvenile life without parole, JLWOP. This past session, we couldn't get a bill out through the committee process, but we're going to be working to reintroduce that, as well as raising the age. So on each of the fronts, I'm addressing healthcare, affordable housing, criminal justice reform, and a couple other issues related to needs-based aid, supporting HBCUs in the state of Georgia. One of the things that I've been tracking closely is the state of North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and I think either Alabama, Mississippi have all sued their states and won lawsuits. Florida is now doing that with their HBCUs, talking about the discriminatory practices and how HBCUs are funded and how they were funded over a period of time that led to some big court cases that came through. So always advocating and fighting for the illustrious Savannah State University here in the great city of Savannah. And so we want to ensure that we have HBCUs for students, and we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to go to college if they desire to, but they don't have to. But if they do desire to go, we want to make sure that money is not the reason as to why they can't go to better themselves.
Okay. Mr. Hall, you want me to keep going? I don't want to talk too much.
Yeah, you keep going. I was just
rowdy. Y'all know how nasty and get the folk now. So. Well,
I'll send the link out.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to talk about two things that you all touched on. Traffic. I've been known to get some tickets in my time, one every year, to be quite honest. And I think that's important. One of the reasons why it's important to me is because, Mallow, I am a big advocate of, and we're not talking about this, we've got to stop putting people behind bars for non-violent offenses. Now, if you want to go out and shoot somebody, rob somebody, rape somebody, you need to go to jail. But if you happen to get a speeding ticket and I ain't paid because I ain't got no money, you don't need to be going to jail. If you happen to get into an argument and you slap somebody, yeah, you probably need a few days to think about it. But we gotta basically, what you're talking about is revised criminal justice reform, and I want to hear more about that from your perspective.
So absolutely. So decriminalize traffic. If you can't pay the ticket today, a lot of these folks end up on probation, and probation is pay to play. So then the probation folks get to add a supervision fee, put them on a 12-month probation for a fine that they couldn't pay, and they have to pay the fine plus the supervision fee, plus all the other ancillary fees that probation tax on. Now, what was $300 just turned into $3,000 just like that. And it is almost like a pyramid scheme. If I couldn't pay the $300 today, and you give me probation, and you say, I'm going to put you on probation for 12 months to pay it, well, guess what? That probation means what? If I violate, if I have another thing that happens, you could violate my probation. Well, that means I could go back to jail. So there are a lot of people sitting in jail where we have space requirements just because they can't bond themselves out. That's when you hear people talk about this taboo of, oh, cash bail, it's going to, set all the criminals free. No, the Constitution guarantees that everyone should have a bond. That's why you have a bond hearing, so that if you have a constitutional right to have a bond, so that if you have been charged with something, you have the ability to mount a proper defense. You can't mount a defense if you're sitting in jail. And so even if you get arrested for something, one of the folks that I was talking with as I was getting more in depth on this issue, young man was arrested because they said he had methamphetamines in his car. He had a nice job, nice car, and literally he took a plea deal to get out of jail because he couldn't get bonded out. No one would sign for him, right? He couldn't get a signature bond, which means he couldn't get bonded out. So he sat in jail. He was risk losing his house, his car, and his job. And he literally took a plea deal just to get out of jail. Now, he actually GBI tests the substance and found out it's not methamphetamine, but he already confessed and took a plea deal, right? That's a travesty in the state of Georgia that you have people who are actively doing the right thing, but because they just want to get out of jail, they're taking any type of plea just to get out of jail. I think that's a travesty. So when we talk about criminal justice reform and ending cash bail, that's what that actually looks like, is that somebody could literally sit in jail, not because they're actually guilty, but because they can't afford to get out. We're not talking about the most violent offenders getting out because the judge still sets the bail. That's why you elect judges. So the judge sets what your bond amount will be. If you have a heinous crime, they set a high bond amount because they don't want you to be free. But if you are a first-time offender, you have no criminal history, they may set a lower bond amount. But guess what? That's the judge. If you want to change how people getting out of jail, change the judges that are sitting on the bench, right? But they're not letting everybody out of jail. If they were, we wouldn't have a space issue. You see what I'm saying? That's just rhetoric and propaganda to confuse people about what cash bail is about. And the same thing with decriminalizing traffic. Again, I'm helping a young man right now who literally had a speeding ticket during COVID, forgot to pay the ticket. He moved during COVID, updated his information, but because everything was closed and shut down, he couldn't physically get in. So the summons got mailed to the wrong address. He didn't get the summons. He was in contempt of court. They suspended his driver's license. He was driving through Chatham County and got pulled over.
Lord, wrong county.
And guess what? He goes to jail.
Wrong color, wrong county.
Now he's in jail. He's got to get somebody to come to Chatham County, bond him out of jail, all for traffic. Now he's on probation from Chatham County for traffic.
Yeah.
Because most judges say ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Well, and what it speaks to really right now, you all, is politicians need to let people do their jobs. And what I mean by that, let the judges do their jobs. Let the women do their jobs. Let the doctors do their jobs. And so to that, Mark, let's talk about healthcare. And this is a personal issue to me. So with healthcare, I want to hear your broader issue, but we've got to do a better job of healthcare for our elderly people here in the state of Georgia. More so, it's very personal because I got two of them right back there, 195, 91, both with memory care issues. And it's so darn hard to get support, financial support, and just real live, education around what are the resources for these folks. I'm sure there are people out there with children and people our age. What are the resources? They're not accessible resources. And then the Republicans make it so damn hard to even access them. So what's your plan?
Well, let me just make a quick point. We are 47th in the nation in terms of access to healthcare and mental health facilities. 47th. I mean, it takes the average Georgian 30 to 90 minutes to get to an emergency services facility. My plan would be to sit everybody down in the assembly and have a come to Jesus meeting with them, because when it comes down to healthcare, we have to make a plan to stop closing so many hospitals. We've closed 10 in the last 8 years. Another one is closing in Atlanta on November 1st, as a matter of fact. So we've got to, in my eyes, we have to use the $6.5 billion surplus that we are sitting on right now. That is unreserved and is undesignated, and use that to bolster our healthcare system. We have to extend Medicaid. I mean, I don't understand how we have not done it yet. Yes, I do understand it, because we have a Republican-led assembly, and they do not. It's almost as if it is. If it's for the people, if it actually benefits individual Georgians, not necessarily a large organization or a large employer or businesses, it falls by the wayside. I was in a forum not too long ago where my opponent, Ron Stevens, said that we have incrementally increased or expanded Medicaid. But if we're doing that, then we're doing it just enough to keep it at bay. But we are in a healthcare crisis, and we've been in a healthcare crisis for at least as long as I've been here. Now, when it comes down to it, we need to make a big step. Stop doing it incrementally. And Derek, I know you are in the assembly, so you've seen this firsthand. We need to extend Medicaid today, period. That's $3.4 billion right there. So if you add those two together, we're looking at $10 billion that we are just we're not doing anything with.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
So I'm gonna tell you why. We have this fantasy in Georgia about people are lazy and that they want a handout and that people don't want to work. Well, for what RG just said earlier on the show, that he's got a mother and father, 91 and 95, right? Well, I would consider if you had to leave your job because you couldn't financially take care of both of those parents, you had to become the primary caregiver every day, 24 hours a day, right, 7 days a week, nonstop. The state of Georgia, you wouldn't have healthcare insurance. So if your parents got sick, they might be covered. But if you got sick, oh, well, hey, man, good luck. Figure it out, bro. Hey, wish you the best. God bless. Because Medicaid wouldn't be available to you. But you have a full-time job, but it doesn't pay you, right? So that full-time job of caring for your parents is one of those things that we see in the state of Georgia that says you need health care. You don't have an income. But Republicans have this fantasy of making this an issue about someone going to work. Well, I can't go to work. I have two elderly parents here that I got to take care of every day. Would you like to come and help take care of them? I think because they're so removed from the plight of everyday people that they forget that when long-term care insurance was talked about, it was too expensive for somebody to buy long-term care insurance. It was too high. Nobody could afford that. When we talked about all of the supplemental plans to Medicare, it was too high. Nobody could afford the supplemental plans. And guess what? If you didn't buy them then, you can't get them now. So, again, that's the issue that people fantasize about this right to work.
And to add to it really quick, Julius.
As a matter of fact, just to add to that, Ron Stevens, as a matter of fact, he said that there are still people out there that there are no jobs that are offering minimum wage, and he believes that the jobs that are offered that are out there, all of them offer medical benefits. That is not the case. When you get a job in Georgia, it is not guaranteed that you're going to get medical coverage. You might have the ability to elect it, but medical coverage in a lot of places and a lot of small businesses and medium-sized businesses are way too expensive to elect. So if you go in and getting $30,000 a year, your medical benefits may cost a third of that, and that's untenable.
But let me go back to this. Not just to mention that thing. I just thank God that I have a sense of spirituality. But you imagine this: you tack on what you just said, Derek, and then you tack on this. How many people in any situation have the opportunity to change the undergarments of their parents every day? That's a whole mental health piece. So we've got to address that too. I just thank God that I have a spiritual being about myself, because when you take that on to all the other things you do in life, you gotta really come to grips with it. This ain't what life's supposed to look like, but you got to get it done. So Ron Stevens comes to this from a space of privilege and ignorance, and so I won't go any deeper because he already hates Julius, and he gonna hate me by the end of this show. Go for it, Julius.
He don't even know me.
Well, he don't know me.
Well, I one of the things, I got two things. One of the things is perhaps Representative Milo can help us with this. What is the number needed to flip the Senate and the House?
Well, I know the House like the back of my hand because that's where I serve currently. In order to flip the House, we are at 77 seats. We need about another 13 seats. 13 seats. So we need the 164. We need the 161. We need seats out of Atlanta on the perimeter. We need seats in Dunwoody. We need seats in Brunswick. I mean, we need seats all over the state in order to get to that 92, because the constitutional majority is 91. If you give us 91 seats in the House, you're going to have some people that flip party, because there's power by being in the majority. And so there's some old Democrats that flip to be Republicans because they're the party in power. So if you want to be effective and able to go back to that home district, you got to have some success. So if we were able to flip the House and get 91 seats, pick up another about 13, 14 seats, we'll be good. We'll be able to elect a new speaker. We'll be the majority and not the minority. That'll change. In the state Senate, I think you'd have to get to about 35 to be in the state Senate. I think we're in the 20s now. State Senate is a lot harder to get to. The House will flip before the Senate because of gerrymandering and reapportionment. They've drawn some of these Senate seats so backwards that you really need to draw them fairly to accurately reflect Georgia. But since these maps a lot for the next 10 years and the population is doubled, it's going to be harder to flip that one. So about 35 senators. Okay,
now this is something I have for both of y'all, because I ran into an incident this morning, and one of my things when you're running for office is GOTV. We got to get the vote out, and I had a call this morning from a young man, 25 years old, that I mentor. And he said, who do I vote for? Should I vote for Herschel Walker? And I said, huh? He said, aren't they just trying to defame him and sully his name? I said, no, they're telling the truth.
He's just an idiot. He's dumb.
I said, no, they're telling the truth. He's an idiot. I said, don't vote for her. She said, well, who do I vote for? All these candidates that I saw on the sample ballot, who do I vote for? I say, vote for everybody with a D by your name. I said, I don't have time to tell you all of it now. I said, but vote for everybody you see that got a D by their name. And he said, okay, I got you. He said, I said, but this is the thing. These young people are not engaged. They're not paying attention. And we want them to vote, but how do we reach them? We got to be able to reach them. There are all types of programs out there, but see, we can't count on just one, like 100 black men. We got to be able to reach these kids that are out in the streets also, that still have their voting rights. We got to be able to reach all these young people that Fair Fight and People's Agenda and APRI and all of them, they had massive voter registrations throughout the state. Millions of people have been registered to vote now. New people on the rolls. How do we reach these people and get them to go vote? Just them signing up. That's the registration. We got to get the education and the participation now. So if y'all got any answers, y'all can tell the audience, please do.
Well, what I do is the only way that you can really do that is connect with local groups. I mean, there are people that are on the ground that are not always in the spotlight, that deal with everyday Richmond, people that live in Richmond Hill, people that live in Pooler, Bloomingdale especially. Bloomingdale has more Democrats than anybody knows of, but because it's such a red city, it's very difficult to get anybody to come out and speak outwardly. But I try to get in contact with people that are just on the ground there. That's, in my eyes, for my campaign, that's the best way and the only way that I can.
Well, you add to that, because we're going to go to a commercial break next.
So I absolutely try to reach younger voters, but I think it's all about each of us that have a connection with people. So literally, because I'm plugged in with the electorate, people call me and say, Derek, tell me about these folks. Who should I vote for? And literally, I send texts out with your information in it, Marcus, my information in it, Margot's information in it, because I know I have a network of people, that will vote if I ask them to go vote. But I got to ask them to go vote. And since I know who they are, I think it goes back to us. We know who those low propensity voters are that we know that we got to talk to and cultivate. But if we don't talk to them, we know who they are. Somebody else may not know who they are. They may not even show up in, a voting system. They might not get a piece of mail. They might not get anything. But if we challenge them, they'll show up and vote. I just did a thing with collegiate students at Savannah State with their NAACP 2 days ago, nonpartisan forum, talking to the students about voting and talking them through how this affects them, because everybody thinks it doesn't affect them. That's the biggest issue I find in getting young people to vote. They say, oh man, I ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm good. True. And then I say, well, let me talk to you about that. Okay. You talk about women's health care. You said, oh, that don't affect you. I said, well, in the state of Georgia, you're going on child support as soon as the child is conceived after the heartbeat is detected, right? The fetal heartbeat. We'll talk about that later. And they were like, what do you mean? I said, oh, yeah. I said, yeah, you got to pay child support, buddy. And if you don't pay and the state pays for that child, they can come back and get that money from you, right? So if the state pays in Medicare, Medicaid, they're going to come back and get that money from you. And he was like, no. I said, oh, yeah, they trust me. He was like, I didn't know that. I said, oh, yeah. So these are just things that when people don't think it doesn't affect them, it does. And they have to really plug in, and we have to just walk them through the process so that they know how this affects them, because nobody's telling them how it affects them. They just think it's one side and ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm good, until you tell them how it does affect them, and how your grandmama won't have health care, and how your sister, if something were to happen, her doctor may be very religious and decide he won't give her an accurate medical diagnosis, which we know is happening to Black women 5 times more than anybody else. And in fact, that's why our motherhood mortality rate is so high for Black women, is because we're oftentimes underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed. And so when you make it plain like that, folks can pick it up and say, okay, I see where you're coming from. But we all have a duty to tell the younger folks to vote. But then it's not just younger folks. We got to tell the old folks they can't stay home. I talked to a lot of older voters who said, baby, I done did that. Y'all got it now. No, we don't have it. We don't have it. I need you to go vote. We ain't there yet. Just give us a couple more years before you give up. Come back out. We need you to vote.
That's it. All right, gentlemen, we're going to hit a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
Hold on.
All right, you got it, Julie.
No, I was just telling them before the commercial that to look on the side if you have your devices, because we're going to ask some questions from the viewers. We have some questions. That's all I wanted to tell you. We had a couple that we wanted y'all to answer.
Here's one from John and Chuck. They were talking about, and I'm going to combine them. So John offered it, but then Chuck added a little more context. It seems like we lose the law certificate in January. Basically, would you all support the municipal option sales tax? Whoever wants to answer first, go for it.
So the most, I support most. Most is the municipal option sales tax. It basically is a penny tax that municipalities can add to their visitors and people that come inside of the city. One of the most effective most in the state of Georgia will be the city of Atlanta. Atlanta operates the most. And I think DCAB operates a host, which is a hybrid local option sales tax that they have there. So Atlanta's most works very well, but they're going through loss negotiations as well in Atlanta. I think municipalities provide more municipal services than what our county counterparts may provide. I know the people from the county are going to say, hey, We do great work. But when I look at, the investment and the return on investment, when you look at the people who are paying for that, I mean, the city of Savannah single-handedly invests a significant amount of its revenue in tourism. And because of that, we've been able to enjoy all of these splashes. But residents of the city of Savannah, I'm a city resident. I live in the city of Savannah. I got to deal with tourism. I have to deal with tourists. So for me to see another municipality like the county take a larger share, when I got to deal with the tourism, to me, I find that a little more gut wrenching to have to look at, because if the city loses the lost negotiations, then that means that they're just going to have to raise the millage rate, which will affect people like myself who are property owners in the city of Savannah. So I do support most. I think it's another unique sales tax option that exists that you can engage in. And it's just the 1 penny tax, but that 1 penny tax goes to primarily support infrastructure, I think, in waterways and sewage and things that those people who come into the city that don't live there impact.
So I support the most, and Richmond Hill or Bryan County has a SPLOS as well. And so, but the thing is, the majority of the people support it as well. And when it comes down to what I'm doing and what I'm running for, it's going to be to represent the people. I believe in a democratic representation, and that means that the one listens to the many. So if there's going to be a vast majority of people that supports this or supports that, I'm definitely going to take a serious look at it, and I'm not going to listen to the minimal or the small groups or the loudest groups. I want to see what the people really truly support, and in Richmond Hill they do. In Chatham County, I know they do as well. So yes, I would support it.
And then, Julius, I think you should ask this question. Looks like you know this young lady.
Yeah, she's asking a bunch of questions, but that just one of hers. I told her she need to just come on the show and ask the questions. She got to have her own show. We need an education show, but she don't want to do the education show. Maybe when we get all these people in office, we'll be able to put all of you together so y'all can ask these questions of one another, because they need you all on the state level to get this money funneled down so that they can do the things they want to do. But she's Dr. Tanya Howard Hall, school board rep for the District 8, and happens to be my wife. She wants to know, what are your plans to change the antiquated QBE, that's the Quality Basic Education Act formula, which has been enacted into law since the 1985 session of the Georgia General Assembly.
1985. I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know. The fact that we have not been able to, we haven't taken a serious look at this since 1985. Guys, I mean, my daughter's 14. She was not alive when this took place. I believe that we have, and you know what, to be real honest, is very little is going to be moved until we can really flip enough seats to get the right people in the right seats to make something around this act happen. But we've got to start somewhere. The first thing that I would really like to see happen is the state to provide a weight to the QBE for underrepresented and impoverished students, because currently there is a huge gap between students, children that are growing up in very dire circumstances, and their colleagues. You walk into the same building, you have the same teacher, but you have a huge gap between reading levels, understanding and comprehension levels. There's no currently there's no weight to that. Also, I would like to see more counselors, student counselors added into the QBE as well, because right now the ratio is 1 to 450. I believe it's 450 students. There's no way that they're going to be there's a way to guide students when you have that many students to be responsible for, and every time you're going to see people that have that are underrepresented, and they have a slightly more difficult life, they are going to fall to the bottom, and they will not get they won't be concentrated. They will not get the proper guidance. I remember that when I was in high school, I was right. I was above the middle, I guess you can say. But I can honestly say,
we got it.
Well, my guidance counselor, honestly, she honestly helped me in ways that I really. She saved my career, to be quite honest. I was going to make just a crazy decision. And it was my guidance counselor that really pulled me out from making that decision. And I did go to college, and I'm the man that you see before you today. But we've got to take a serious look. And again, until we get those seats flipped, we're not going to there isn't going to be much in terms of modification, but it is on my plate. It is one of my priorities to keep arguing and fussing and yelling about in the assembly.
And if we could, we're going to kind of condense this answer, Derek, and then what we're going to do going forward is kind of do one question per candidate. So, Derek, if you could answer this one, we'll go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the quality basic education formula. This is how rural Georgia benefits over the more metro cities. So you have your FTE, which is your full-time equivalency. You get your full-time equivalency. You get salaries and operations, right? Then you get how much money you would be allocated in QBE. Then once you get that number, you take your local millage rate that the school board collects, take that off the top, and then boom, once you minus the local mill out, that means this is what you're left with in QBE dollars. So if you're in a city who has a lower millage rate, right? So meaning you are collecting less money, you're going to get more from the state. But let's talk about some of the ancillary services that we know more metro and urban areas need. We need more social workers. Well, I think that's the formula is like 3,000 to 1 for QBE. And it might be in between 2,500 and 3,000. I can't remember the exact number. So that's the number, to 1, right? So that many students to 1 of those social workers. The other issue that we lose out on is when you deal with salaries. So pre-K teachers are not on the full funding schedule, right? So meaning they are not paid like a K-12 teacher, right? And so believe it or not, in the state of Georgia, fun fact, kindergarten is not required, only first grade. So we talk about wanting to be the best state, but we don't even require kindergarten in this state. So you look at pre-K, teachers got to get funded, got to have classroom space for students. Wait a minute, pre-K. Who's funding pre-K? Pre-K is a lottery program funded through the lottery. So it's not 100% funded. So meaning your local mills have to go to fund pre-K if you want to have pre-K program. So when you look at the disproportionate amount of how funding comes out from QBE, also transportation, not funded in QBE. So more urban, more metro areas, you got more kids to pick up, more bus stops. Well, if transportation costs and diesel and fuel go up, well, that means your local millage rate has to go to fund that. But guess what? You're losing money because the QBE formula says we got to take away whatever your local mills are. So if you raise more, we got to take more, which means you got to do better with more money. And so I think there's a big issue of how that's allocated. But if you're in a more rural community and your millage rate is not as high as it needs to be, well, guess what? You get more money from the state. So you benefit. I tell people all the time, Gwinnett County benefits from the QBE formula because they have had a boom in population, but they haven't had to raise their millage rate so high because guess what? They have more people paying property taxes because they boomed. More people paying property taxes, we don't have to raise the mill. So now I get more money from the state. So when we talk about the disparities in QBE, it definitely penalizes more urban areas. And so until you can get a form or even an addition in the formula that recalculates how things are weighted, we know that children who are in poverty that go to public schools need more wraparound services. And those services need to be in the form of more clinicians, more social workers, more school counselors, and some of the other additional teacher helps, paraprofessionals. Those are things that the district, takes care of 100%. And I think when we look at how much money the local school district gets, they may get a lot of money, but when federal money comes into the local school district, it's got 30 strings attached to it. And you have to spend it exactly the way they say, because if you don't, federal government's going to say, hey, send me my money back. You didn't do exactly everything I said do. If you think that's not the case, try working with HUD dollars. It's the same way. There's so many stipulations attached that it affects some of our most vulnerable communities. We can come back and talk about financial aid and how financial aid, even though we have Pell Grants and student loans, I can educate you about the disproportionate effects to HBCUs with the additional verification and income requirements and why HBCUs are penalized on getting that type of funding. So we talk about that too.
All right, Marcus, let's go to you on this particular issue. And we know when Trump and his idiots lost power and how they acted like 2-year-olds. Ron Stevens was one of those 2-year-olds. And so would you support the idiotic local support control as Ron Stevens tried to do in his temper tantrum?
So yes, this has been honestly, okay, so true, real life transparency. This is one of the reasons that I jumped in this race this year, because I was not going to run, but when Ron Stevens tried to split Port Wentworth, who, by the way, it's not even in his district. Okay, let's just make that clear. And number two, he was the leading representative that was trying to split it. Now, if he can do that, and the people do not understand how close it was to actually happening. Okay, let's just put that out there. It is very simple to do it. There just needs to be a majority vote on it. They can do the same thing in Richmond Hill. They can do the same thing in Pooler. They can make a North Richmond Hill and a South Richmond Hill. And of course, all the dollars are going to go to a certain to one of those Richmond Hills, and guess which one it will be. Okay. I do not support that in any way, shape, or form. When I found out about it, that was the moment that really broke the camel's back for me. I was not focused on running for this race, but man, when I heard that, along with a number of other things that he stated, and then the Roe v. Wade choice came out, I couldn't sit still. I mean, I was burning, and I had to get back out there and make him fight for this seat. And when it turns out on November 8th that I'm the winner, he's going to be a little sorry that he did this. It is a dangerous game to play when you can just split a city in half. That's not even in your district. Richmond Hill, Pooler, Bloomingdale, South Savannah, those are in his district, and I can promise you that I would never do anything like that.
Well, that's definitely good to hear, Julius. One of the things we hear Keisha Gibson Carter, 68th mayor of Savannah, talk about the port, and it intrigues me and it disappoints me that in Chatham County we have a poverty rate when we have a port that brings in tremendous dollars, and the state takes that money from us. So, Milo, this is a great question from former County Commissioner McMasters. Should the port pay some of the President Street train on and off ramps? The trains are hauling port goods, and we got some damage around the area. Even with this infrastructure issue that we slept on for years, what are your thoughts around the ports and this question here?
So should the ports pay for the longer rail crossing times for the goods that are coming off from President Street? So the port is actually expanded and have a rail line that runs from the port. What you see with the President Street terminal crossing, a lot of this, when I work with Norfolk Southern and CSX, even working on the issue with Garden City, it times out to be a couple different factors that go into it. Just like having the horn blaring when they ride through the city of Savannah at 6 a.m. I live by the river, so I hear it every morning, right? As federal regulation requires them to blow the horn. Federal regulation requires them to do certain things when they're switching tracks. And then they also have, just like Department of Transportation on truck drivers, they sometimes have conductors who are timed out. And so while they may have been waiting for a long period of time and they were pulling the train and they timed out. They can't move the train. So you have to get another conductor and engineer. So there's also some staffing issues that go into that. And so I think the port has done a good job trying to alleviate some of that truck traffic by putting things on rail. Rail is a little bit more safer in getting it to its destination. But I think some of this also goes back to the individual rail lines that are operating the rails. If you think about the federal legislation that enacts the railroad, they have single unilateral power to where the railroad goes through. They have a railroad police department, and they have jurisdiction to wherever the railroad goes. So until you roll back some of the federal regulations that allow railroads to operate the way that they do, no municipal or state government can do anything to really slow down the railroad. In fact, I put a bill out my first session with my colleague out of Atlanta, requiring the railroads to disclose when the trains are going to be running. And we were met with intense opposition on that because the rail lines also compete with each other. And they don't want to disclose when they're using the rail because that will tell people how profitable or how much losses they're taking by how often they're using the rail line. So you can't even get them to publish a schedule as to when they're going to be running on the rail. So that's a much larger issue that I think we have to work collectively on. But there's an opportunity where rails are blocking traffic. I think with the Build Back Better and the infrastructure dollars is to build and put those rails on bridges so that they go over a bridge where they're not blocking the traffic for everyday citizens as we become more urban will be one of those solutions. And we are actually, I submitted a letter of support with CSX to study that issue for Garden City, to look at how we can take the rail off the road and maybe put it up on a bridge to alleviate traffic.
Yeah, that and well, you will inherit both of those problem areas. You because your district will run through Garden City and it will run to the other pressure point, which is President Street. That'll be your district also. So you got both of those. So I think that since we can't do anything to move it along any faster in reference to making the railroads do anything, can't, like you just said, we ought to be able to build over.
Mm-hmm.
So that, that traffic can keep flowing, because you have ambulances that are and emergency services with the police that can't get by because this train is sitting there 15, 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's a real problem. And then I saw that the other day that they say it's 5 years before it gets built.
So the letter I just sent out was the Railroad Crossing Evaluation Program calls for the Multimodal Community Improvement Project, and it's the CMCIP. And basically, this is looking to improve the engineering at 11 railroad crossings here within our jurisdiction. And so we're asking for municipal support as well as state support and federal matching funds to be able to take this on. And so this would eliminate a burden on residents and businesses by, opting in on this. So this is kind of what I'm doing. I'm not even state rep for Garden City, but, here's my letter. I'm already working for Garden City. Before I got elected, I've been working with Natalie Morris and Riga Lassiter out there to address those railroad issues right now. And I think we can get there. I think it's going to be a process to get there. We can't turn it around overnight. We didn't get here overnight. So let's get the study out there. Let's find out what our options are. Let's get the matching money and the funds on the table to be able to do it so we can address that issue.
Okay. Awesome. Let's see if we got another question. John wanted to know earlier, why is Atlanta the only place that was allowed to do this? It was an emergency approval.
No, Atlanta's had most since the 2000s when they put it on the ballot. I tell everybody, when you look at legislation, it is the city of Atlanta and the rest of the state. Atlanta comes to the forefront and has some of the most investment from the state goes to Atlanta because they invested in Atlanta. That's why Atlanta is the metro city it is today. That's because the state has continued to invest. And so when I go to Atlanta, I tell everybody, I love my colleagues on the Democratic side that are from Atlanta. I think they're great people. But when it comes down to the city of Atlanta versus the rest of the state, them and I see totally different about different things, especially when it comes to intermodal transportation. The state, funds MARTA single-handedly, right? But when I talk about intermodal investment in public transportation outside of the more metro area of Atlanta, I'm fighting for Chatham Area Transit in Savannah to get more funding so we can have regional transportation, right? But guess what? That money doesn't come out of Atlanta. It goes back in investment and transportation in Atlanta. And that's a big issue in the state. So Atlanta has the most tax because they've had it for the last 22 years. And the voters keep putting it back on the ballot. I think it was passed when the federal government passed the Clean Water Act, and the city of Atlanta had to opt in and spend the money, but they didn't have enough money to do it in their watershed. I mean, even today, the city of Atlanta has the highest amount of unpaid water bills of any municipality. In fact, they're actually making people pay their water bills now. So that most tax goes to fund that water investment.
Okay. All right.
Well, George, you want to hit another commercial break and we come back for about another 15 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, we'll hit the last commercial. We'll come back with more questions from the audience for you guys, and we'll get this done.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. They ran. Where did y'all go? Come back. There you go. Like they done left us. But no. All right. Julius, I don't see any more from the audience.
Well, you got Ivan Cohen said, Representative Mallow, what you just say, it sounds really like two Georgias, Atlanta and everybody else, which is correct. Which is correct. That's what he just said. That's what it is. And we got to get away from that. And the only way to do that is to, and I don't know what it'll change if we flip. It probably ended up getting worse.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm going to put it out there, and this is a big DPG problem, Democratic Party of Georgia problem, and the chair, the past chair. We've got to stop pulling everybody out of Atlanta. Just because you live inside 285 don't mean you're the only one qualified to run for state office, period. And we got to stop that mentality.
Well, so the problem is Atlanta got the votes. I talk about this all the time with Lester Jackson. Lester won everything on the coast for labor commissioner, but he didn't win North Georgia and Atlanta. And, on the Republican and the Democratic side, if you look at past races, when Eric Johnson ran for lieutenant governor, he was out of Savannah. He couldn't win. You look at the former congressman of the first, Jack Kingston ran for U.S. Senate and lost. It's hard to win being from Savannah. Al Scott lost labor commissioner being from Savannah. When you look at running from Savannah and the base, and so many voters are concentrated in the metro area in Atlanta, man, that million plus votes right there. I mean, it's until we start outperforming in everything outside of Atlanta. We need the Macons, we need the Augustas, the Chathams, the Brunswicks. We need all these counties to start performing so well that we could counter effect Atlanta. So we can say, no, if you want to win statewide office, you got to come through I-16 to 75.
Right.
But right now they say all I got to do is get on 285, and if I stay on 285, I'm good.
And that's a circle.
That's it.
Because you're absolutely right. Because one of the things I see is that when these candidates are coming here, they're coming just for show, it seems, because they're still rallying the people that are already with them. You have to go out and get these people, like I said earlier, who aren't engaged. These are the people, these are the difference makers, because Chatham and in this area, we're going to vote blue. So you have to go and get those people to push that number up to make that difference. If they left 70,000 votes on the table last time in this area, that was enough for her to win, the last election. And until they come here with a seriousness to understand that include everybody, because they're leaving people out. Believe me, I know they're leaving people out who can make a difference. And then you don't want to piss those people off, because then they're going to sit back. And I know several of them who are sitting back and not doing anything, period, to help, because they feel left out. And the thing is, they got to come here and include everybody and not just be in a tunnel, But that's just
I think that goes back to it goes directly back to leadership, not only in the state party but locally as well. We have, as leaders, you all know that we sacrifice. and we do the duty, whether or not we have time for it, whether or not our family enjoys it, whether or not we want to do it. We do it because it is what the people need. That is what is required of a leader in this area, in Atlanta, and in the state of Georgia. And when it comes down to it, we've got to consolidate the leadership in Chatham County. We have to, period, point blank. And when we consolidate leadership here, Atlanta will have no choice but to take notice, period.
That's correct.
And until we do that, it's going to be the same story.
Yeah. So as we shift gears and go to a different angle, I know that you both raised some really critical pieces earlier on that we may have not covered. So what would be each? Derek, what would be that one thing you wanted to talk about that we have not discussed? And then same thing for you, Marcus.
I mean, you know, we've discussed the gamut of issues. Actually, I don't think it's the one thing that I want to discuss because I love talking about public policy and how it intersects with legislation. That's kind of like one of my shining stars when we have these type of conversations. I would say this. I want to talk about why someone may ask, why don't we see the change that we want to see immediately, or why don't we get this, and this? And I want to talk about the legislative process, because I think a lot of people don't realize that it takes a lot of work to get a single piece of legislation passed. In fact, you have to not only move through the committee process and get out of committee, and in the Republican-controlled legislature, you got to convince a majority of Republicans on the committee that your bill is a good idea. And then you get out of committee. Then you go to the Rules Committee in the House, and then you got to make it out of the Rules Committee, and you got to come out structured, modified, structured, or open. And those are the rules for debate on the House floor. If it's modified, they've modified the bill and the debate calendar as to how it can be debated. If it's structured, it's a time limit on it. If it's open, I mean, we can go all day and debate this bill. Ain't no time limit on it. And so now you get to the floor of the House. The Speaker has unilateral power. He also can call bills in any order, and he doesn't have to call your bill, and he can skip your bill if he wants to. And then if you're lucky enough to pass a bill in the floor of the House, you got to wait till a crossover day to go to the Senate and do the same exact thing over again. Now you got to convince a committee in the Senate, this is a great idea, we got to do this. And then you got to get out of the Rules Committee and the Rules Chairman, you got to convince them, hey, this is a great idea, I need the Senate to vote on it. Then you got to get it to the floor. And then you got to hope the Lieutenant Governor calls your bill for a vote and that they don't suspend the rules and go out of order. And then you hope that after you do all of that, it makes it to the governor's desk. And in 45 days, if he doesn't sign your bill, it will become law. But in those 45 days, if he vetoes it, you're back at square one again. So this is the legislative process, right? This is how the sausage is made. It's not as easy. You got to work like hell. You got to make friends across the aisle. Sometimes you got to ghostwrite and add it on to another bill, find a writer, try to do all this stuff to pass a bill. And you would say, Derek, it should be easy to do this. It's not. It's not easy because you got 180 personalities in the House. You got 56 personalities in the Senate, including your own, because sometimes I don't even like myself. So I look at my shadow like it's moving funny some days.
I appreciate that comment.
So when you look at it and you're honest, I mean, there are days I don't like myself, right? I don't like myself some days. I get frustrated myself. So looking at all those people trying to make it happen, it happens. And some days it happens and some days it doesn't happen, but you got to keep working. You got to keep working on compromise. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I will say that we've lost in the legislature and even in the community is the ability to compromise, because we either want it all our way or they want it all their way. And we won't come to the middle and agree on half and half. My grandma always used to say, half a loaf is better than none. But folks have made this mindset that if I ain't getting the whole loaf, then the hell with the loaf. And that's on both sides. That's Republicans and Democrats. And I would say Democrats are more amenable to work with folks than Republicans are. They really have entrenched themselves in it's either the whole loaf or it ain't nothing. But I can fight another day if I can get half of it today. Then I can fight to get the other half tomorrow. What I can't fight is when I'm not in the majority and I'm fighting for a half and they really only want to give me a slice of the bread. And really not even a slice. They want to give me the end of the bread. If y'all from Savannah, we call that the bunkie piece of the bread. They want to give us that piece of the bread. And so that's the piece of bread they really want us to have. And so you fighting, and then you try to explain this to folks, and they're like, well, hell, you ain't did enough. I'm like, you see the grants I got? It's not because I wasn't up here sitting there. You see my office? I mean, all this stuff in here. It's not my paper. This is legislation. We're working. We're trying to figure out a system or a way to do it. And then folks say, oh, you ain't working hard enough. And that's probably one thing I would say that we haven't talked about is that folks don't know how hard you got folks working to really make a difference in a change. And sometimes we got our behinds handed to us, but we still go back and try it again.
Yeah. All right, Marcus, what's your drop?
That we need to talk more about that, Derek. I agree. That's the fact that it takes so much to get so little done. People don't they really don't see what's behind the scenes. Even being a candidate, to be quite honest, there's so much on the table that nobody ever sees. I think it's very important. You know, I think we kind of talk around this in the national setting, in the state setting. We have lost relationship in the ability to nurture relationships and conversations, and I think that has been to the detriment of the individual Georgian. Derek just said, you have to make friends across the aisle. You have to. In my race, I have very, very different cities. Some cities they are blue controlled. Some cities are red controlled. But the bottom line is, one of the biggest reasons I feel like I can do a very good job in this in this position is because I have conversations. I listen to people that don't believe as me, that don't look like me, that probably don't even like me. I'll sit down and I'll talk to them, because when you do that, all the barriers start to fall away. Now, of course, you're going to have some extremists and hardcore people that it won't matter what you do, they're going to hate you. Okay, absolutely. I can't do much with that. But when it comes down to, you know, you have when I have Republicans coming up to me saying, you know, you were the only warm-blooded creature on that forum, on that panel today, with Ron Stevens and Ben Watson there. I mean, these guys, they do not have it's unfortunate. They can't relate to the everyday Georgian. They don't understand the struggles. They don't know what it's like to go out and have to worry about whether or not you got enough change in your pocket to buy that loaf of bread. And when it comes down to it, that is what representation is about. And I believe that once we get a chance to talk around that subject, when we talk about the fact that, yes, you can't do it all with all Democrats, especially right now, because we're not in control. You have to reach across the aisle. You have to get the important things in bills where they may not normally be. But we also have to start understanding that we've got to start bringing up relationships, focusing on relationships, and having conversations. And that's what I would like to really kind of end on that. And that is the one reason why I know that I will be a better choice than Ron Stevens.
Hey, Marcus, you ever seen somebody rich go steal groceries out of Walmart?
I have seen a number of rich people judge those people that are doing that.
Exactly. Because you don't know what it's like to be poor until you've been poor. And if you're wealthy, you can't identify with poor people stealing groceries because you've never had to steal groceries. So when I talk about crime and shoplifting, I was in county commissioners meeting the other day, and I was listening to him talk about the shoplifting and what does it look like and what does everything entail. Again, most crimes are crimes of poverty, right? Or crimes of passion. And then you have some violent crime that exists. But until you really deal with the root cause of poverty and the stagnant loss between the wealth gap in this community, in this entire state, you're never going to see what it's like for this person to go to Family Dollar and steal hot dogs and bread to feed their family. It's a big issue. Jay Jones, what's up, Bubba?
Hey, y'all right? George J. Jones is in the house. How you doing, man? Oh, there you go. You're back. So for the first time ever, ATR has, of course, the first fam A sick man, I guess those cues. You better be glad we went overtime. You better be glad. How you doing, Jay? But no, really quick, Julius, what I'm glad to hear is we got 3 young brothers, and y'all gonna have a partner down here on city council next year, and we're gonna get some stuff done.
And that's part of what I want to say. What we have to do, and you know, this is a call to you two, especially, and to Jay and to Robert and to everybody that's going to be on all these elected positions. We have to build a machine. If we build the machine, then nothing can be penetrated. If it's well-oiled, a well-oiled machine can do anything and make the changes necessary to do what's necessary for those people who put you in office. See, when it's not selfishness that everybody's out there practicing.
Right.
There's a lot of people practicing selfishness. Right. And what
egos and selfishness.
Elected by the people, right? And we got to get those egos out the way. And what we have to do is sit everybody in the room, call a meeting. If they don't show, then we call them out. But we have to be able to put everybody in the room and say, we about to work. What do you need? I need to know so I can see if I can make some deals here in Atlanta to get it done. You know, right. And that's what needs to be done. I don't see it. No, I know a lot of people tell me all the time, "Oh, we talking." No, we need to see y'all talking. Yeah. We need to see y'all talking. That's what makes the difference, because then we are motivated to help you if something isn't getting done. Right. You don't need to talk behind closed doors. You need to talk so we can see you, so that we can come out and help you. We got to start letting everybody in the room. Everybody got to come in the room, and we're more powerful together. When we're operating outside of each other, we're weak. So
and I agree with you. An example of that, honestly, if we had a conversation at the state level, in the Senate and the representative, T-SPLOS wouldn't have an issue right now. T-SPLOS would pass, and we would have some real solid, sensible projects, right? It's probably like on the past, everybody knows what's going on, and there's no education around it. So that's just an example of how, if we will collaborate and we work together, we can have things done. So, gentlemen, really quick, what are your last? Oh, there goes 68. What are your last statements? And we're going to sign off until next week. Marcus Thompson, what's your last statement?
Last statement is, my name is Marcus Thompson, and I'm running for District 164. This is an election about choice, of course. But you have, if you have a moment, go back to the WJCL forum about 3 weeks ago. You will see the difference between myself and Ron Stevens. One of the things that I would implement when I'm in, that I would put forth, is that everybody that is an elected official would need to go through poverty simulation, so that they can at least live a simulated life in the life of a person or family that lives in poverty. And that way we'll be able to at least acknowledge that they can relate on some level. I believe that our best days are in front of us, especially with people like Representative Derek Mallow here. I think that if we can get people out, and if we can get people to vote, then we will always win. So I hope, and I'm asking for your vote, Marcus Thompson for District 164. My website is electmarcusforus.com. Please come out and visit and find out what I'm about.
Well, let me thank ATR, Julius Hall, Dr. R.J. Bryan for the opportunity to come on your platform, share with your viewers today. Most importantly, I'm asking everybody for their vote on early, or November 8th. You can go to www.derekforgeorgia.com. Connect with me on policy platform, any of the issues that I talked about that are state issues, and let's have a conversation about it. I tell everybody, we might not agree on everything, and in fact we might disagree. I just pray that we're not disagreeable where we can't work together, because you can disagree with me on something, we can still work together. We got to end the divisiveness that exists in our community, where if you don't support one thing that I'm supporting, then you just throw me out the window. Because the people who know me, my constituents will tell you I represent them and represent them well. And I'll keep fighting for them in the state Senate. So I ask everybody to vote early on November 8th. Vote Derek Mallow to be your next state senator, and I'll keep working and keep fighting for you every day. And Marcus, I want you to know we both make the same amount in the state legislature, $17,346 a year. I mean, we're gonna break the bank with that salary. So I know a lot of folks say we make $100,000 doing this. It's $17,346.
Let me get 5 out.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I heard it. I'm in it for the money. I was like, bro, what are you talking about?
Ain't no money.
Hey, they said it all the time. Say, don't you make $100,000? Well,
Man, you go to
Exactly.
you make go to Chick-fil-A, make more than that. All right, gentlemen, we got this chat popped in. Jay Jones, can you hear us? You don't hear us?
Jay at homecoming, man. It's Shaw homecoming.
Oh man. It ain't homecoming like Savannah State, but gentlemen, y'all get to see Jay Jones. What area is he running for, Julius?
District
One
1.
for State Senate 1.
Okay. So y'all make sure y'all support Jay Jones if you're out in that area. And we're gonna see y'all next Saturday, same time, same place. And next week, Julius, I got a shout out for somebody, and you know who I'm coming for next week. You close that homeless camp on President Street, Little Kasim Reed. Look for me next week. We'll see y'all.
Thank y'all for having me.
like that.